Archaeologists have discovered a huge ancient city hidden underground in Mexico, which may give a better understanding of the Maya civilization.
Think you know the Maya? Think again. For years, we imagined them as a proud, isolated civilization, rising and falling on their own.
You're not supposed to have giant cities in a tropical forest.
But a new DNA study just blew that story wide open. Ancient bones are telling secrets no one expected about migrations.
This is the earliest dedicated burial ground that we know of in Central America.
Surprising ancestry and hidden struggles that textbooks totally missed. Suddenly, the Maya aren't just history.
Shedding new light on a lost and ancient world, and exposing long-lost secrets about the origin of the Maya civilization.
They're part of a story that's stranger, messier, and way more shocking than anyone imagined. What we thought we knew. For centuries, the Maya have captured the imagination of historians, travelers, and archaeologists alike. Towering pyramids, sprawling cities, and intricate glyphs painted a picture of a civilization both brilliant and mysterious. Based on archaeological digs, pottery, and skeletal studies, the story seemed simple. The Maya emerged in Mesoamerica, developed advanced cities, thrived for centuries, and eventually collapsed due to environmental pressures, warfare, or societal changes. It was a tidy, fascinating narrative, perfect for textbooks, documentaries, and museum exhibits. Most historians assumed the Maya were relatively isolated. Migration and genetic mixing were considered minimal, limited perhaps to trade routes or occasional interactions with neighboring groups. The prevailing image was of a people developing culture, technology, and social structures largely on their own. The Maya were a remarkable success story of ingenuity, independence, and adaptation to a challenging environment. Archaeologists marveled at their achievements: mathematics, astronomy, architecture, all seemingly emerging within a self-contained society. Yet even within this neat narrative, subtle anomalies raised questions. Skeletal features in some regions didn't entirely match expectations for a fully isolated population. Certain artifacts hinted at distant connections, suggesting the Maya might have been influenced by or mixed with other groups earlier than thought. Burial patterns, ceremonial objects, and even variations in pottery styles hinted at a more complex story beneath the surface. Despite these hints, the historical consensus remained. The Maya were largely an isolated civilization, their story written primarily through ruins, glyphs, and oral histories. The gaps in knowledge were acknowledged but difficult to fill. Without direct genetic evidence, much about their ancestry remained speculative. How did populations migrate? Were there waves of newcomers or hidden interactions that left no trace in the archaeological record? These questions lingered quietly, waiting for technology capable of uncovering secrets buried for centuries. And that's exactly what makes the latest DNA studies such a game-changer. Suddenly, scientists can peek directly into the genetic code of ancient Maya, seeing connections, migrations, and ancestral patterns that were invisible through artifacts alone. The neat story of an isolated, self-contained civilization is suddenly far less tidy and far more fascinating. And the secrets hidden in the genes? They're about to rewrite everything we thought we knew about the Maya, and some of it is downright shocking. The DNA revolution hits the Maya. For most of history, uncovering the secrets of the Maya meant digging in the dirt, literally. Archaeologists examined ruins, glyphs, and skeletons, trying to piece together migrations, ancestry, and culture. But bones can only tell part of the story. Enter ancient DNA testing, a scientific breakthrough that has completely changed the game. By extracting tiny fragments of genetic material from centuries-old bones and teeth, scientists can now trace lineage, migration patterns, and even interconnections between populations that left no archaeological trace. The process isn't simple. DNA degrades over time, especially in tropical environments like Mesoamerica. But with advanced techniques in genomic sequencing and contamination prevention, researchers can recover enough genetic material to analyze patterns across generations. Teams have worked meticulously, collecting samples from multiple Maya sites, from sprawling cities like Tikal to smaller rural settlements, ensuring the data captures a broad and accurate picture of Maya populations over time. What makes this so exciting is the depth of insight DNA provides. Skeletal remains can hint at health, diet, or cultural practices. Artifacts can suggest trade networks, but DNA reveals where people came from, who they were related to, and even the degree of mixing between populations. It can uncover migrations that occurred centuries before major cities appeared, and it can challenge long-held assumptions about population isolation. Early results from these studies hinted at surprises. Some Maya groups carried genetic markers from populations thought to be unrelated or distant. Others showed signs of mixing far earlier than historical records suggested. Even subtle differences between neighboring settlements revealed unexpected connections. Suddenly, what once seemed like isolated pockets of civilization were actually part of a much larger, interconnected web of people, moving, trading, and intermarrying across Mesoamerica. It's a revolution in understanding, one that doesn't replace archaeology. It enhances it, giving researchers a microscopic window into the movement, mixing, and evolution of ancient populations. And while early findings were intriguing, the full revelations from Maya DNA are even more dramatic, shaking the very foundations of what we thought we knew. When scientists dug deeper into the genes, the results didn't just surprise, they shocked the world. The surprising findings. When researchers finally analyzed the DNA from centuries-old Maya remains, the results were nothing short of astonishing. What had long been thought to be a relatively isolated civilization turned out to be far more genetically complex than anyone imagined. Scientists discovered evidence of unexpected migrations and surprising ancestry, showing that the Maya were not as cut off as textbooks had suggested. Instead, their genetic makeup told a story of connections, movements, and intermixing across Mesoamerica that had gone entirely unnoticed. One of the most striking revelations was the presence of lineages previously thought absent in the region. Certain markers indicated that some Maya communities shared ancestry with groups hundreds of miles away, challenging the assumption that most populations evolved in strict isolation. Even settlements considered remote were genetically linked to distant populations, suggesting trade, migration, or intermarriage far earlier than archaeology alone had indicated. Researchers also found evidence of multiple waves of migration. Some Maya communities appeared to descend from earlier Mesoamerican populations, while others carried markers hinting at newcomers entering the region long before classic city-states were established. This painted a picture of dynamic populations constantly moving, blending, and reshaping the genetic landscape, rather than a static, isolated civilization. The DNA also revealed subtle genetic mixing within local populations. Instead of neatly separated lineages, most Maya communities showed signs of interconnection, reinforcing the idea that social and familial networks were far more widespread than previously thought. These discoveries made scientists rethink the cultural and political cohesion of the Maya. If populations were genetically diverse and interconnected, then alliances, trade networks, and conflicts might also have been far more complex than assumed. Experts reacted with a mix of excitement and caution. This completely reshapes our understanding of Maya origins, said one geneticist. We are looking at a civilization that was part of a broader, interconnected human story, not isolated geniuses as we once imagined. Archaeologists quickly realized that many assumptions based on skeletal studies or artifacts alone would need to be revisited. The implications were both fascinating and unsettling. Not only did the findings rewrite history, but they also suggested that the Maya's development social structures, and resilience were influenced by populations and migrations previously invisible in the record. Suddenly, the civilization we thought we knew became something far messier and far more human. If the ancestry revelations were surprising, the darker truths buried in their DNA were even more shocking and far from what anyone had expected. Maya civilization like you've never seen it. The DNA revelations don't just rewrite family trees, they shake the foundation of how we understand Maya civilization itself. For decades, scholars pictured the Maya as isolated communities, carefully building cities, pyramids, and trade networks on their own terms. But the genetic evidence shows something different. A civilization that was far more interconnected, dynamic, and dependent on movement and mixing than anyone realized. If Maya populations were constantly receiving newcomers from distant regions, that changes our understanding of how cities like Tikal, Palenque, and Copan developed. Urban growth may not have been purely local. It might have been fueled by migrants bringing new skills, ideas, and technologies. Trade networks, previously understood mainly through artifacts, may have also carried people themselves, creating a living, moving web of human exchange. In other words, the Maya weren't just trading goods, they were trading genes too. This interconnectedness also offers new insight into political alliances and conflicts. Genetic diversity suggests that family ties and migration could have played a larger role in shaping leadership, loyalty, and city-state relationships than previously imagined. Some rivalries or collaborations may have been influenced by distant familial or community connections, adding layers of complexity to the political landscape. The findings also help explain certain archaeological mysteries. Skeletal variations that once puzzled researchers, unusual burial patterns, and differences in material culture across regions now make more sense when viewed through the lens of migration, and mixing populations weren't static. They were evolving in response to internal and external influences. And yet, the story isn't just about growth and innovation. The DNA hints at vulnerability, stress, and resilience. Population mixing may have exposed the Maya to new diseases or introduced strains of pathogens they had never encountered before. It could also explain sudden demographic shifts or bottlenecks that appear in the archaeological record. Genetic data gives us a window into the pressures that shaped their society, pressures invisible to the naked eye but encoded in their DNA. In short, the Maya were far from the isolated geniuses we imagined. They were part of a vibrant, messy, and sometimes fragile network of people moving across Mesoamerica, constantly adapting, blending, and surviving. Their story is richer, and in some ways, darker than anyone expected. The darker side isn't just theoretical. DNA reveals challenges and struggles that textbooks never hinted at, showing just how precarious Maya life could be, the darker truths revealed. While the Maya DNA findings revealed fascinating connections and migrations, they also uncovered some sobering truths beneath the story of bustling cities, trade networks, and cultural brilliance. The genes tell a story of vulnerability and stress, something archaeology alone could never fully capture. One of the first revelations was evidence of population bottlenecks. Certain Maya communities showed signs that their numbers had sharply declined at different points in history. This could have been due to environmental pressures, disease, or conflict. But the DNA made it clear that these weren't minor fluctuations. Entire communities may have been wiped out or forced to migrate, leaving genetic scars still visible centuries later. The studies also suggested that some Maya populations were exposed to diseases from migrating groups. Genetic markers hint at immune system challenges, possibly from pathogens introduced during these movements. While the Maya are often remembered for their engineering, astronomy, and political organization, the reality is that survival itself was a constant challenge. Life was fragile, and even a thriving city could be destabilized by forces invisible to the naked eye. Nutritional stress also appeared in the DNA. Some markers indicated prolonged periods of dietary strain, which likely corresponded with environmental changes or overpopulation in certain regions. Combined with disease vulnerability, these factors help explain sudden declines in urban centers or rapid societal changes that previously puzzled historians. Even social structures were affected. Migration and intermixing may have brought cultural and genetic diversity, but they also introduced potential conflicts, pressures on local resources, and shifts in alliances. Genetic evidence hints that the Maya weren't always in control of these changes. They were responding to circumstances beyond their immediate power, adapting as best they could. Experts emphasize that these darker truths aren't meant to diminish the Maya's achievements. They highlight just how resilient they were. Despite disease, stress, and population pressures, they built cities, advanced knowledge, and complex societies that lasted centuries. The DNA simply adds nuance, showing that the Maya's story wasn't just brilliant, it was also a daily struggle for survival, adaptation, and resilience in a world full of uncertainty. While these challenges were enormous, the lessons DNA provides go beyond history. They reshape how we understand human adaptability, survival, and the tangled web of ancestry itself. How history and genetics clash. The Maya DNA revelations didn't just add details, they upended long-held historical assumptions. For decades, scholars relied on artifacts, ruins, and skeletal studies to piece together Maya history. While these sources were invaluable, they offered only a partial picture. Now, genetics is showing that the Maya story is far messier, more interconnected, and more surprising than archaeology alone could reveal. Take migration, for example. Archaeologists often assumed that Maya populations were relatively stationary, their culture evolving largely in isolation. Bones, pottery, and city layouts seem to support this idea. But DNA shows constant movement, intermixing, and even the arrival of previously unknown groups. Populations thought to be native to specific regions carry genetic markers from distant areas, reshaping our understanding of who the Maya really were. The clash goes beyond migration. Skeletal variations that puzzled researchers, unusual burial customs, and differences in material culture now make more sense through the lens of genetics. DNA fills in the blanks, revealing connections, interactions, and pressures that left no mark on buildings or artifacts. It's like reading a hidden diary of an entire civilization, a record invisible to archaeology but preserved in the human body itself. This intersection also raises questions about how we teach and interpret history. If the Maya were so interconnected, how do we define their cultural identity? How much of what we assumed about city-states, alliances, and conflicts was shaped by genetics and migration patterns rather than geography alone? Suddenly, what seemed like neat, isolated histories are messy, living stories shaped by countless invisible threads. The clash of history and genetics isn't a contradiction, it's a revelation. It shows that to fully understand civilizations, we need both approaches. Artifacts tell us what people built and believed, while DNA shows who they were and where they came from. Together, they paint a richer, more human picture, highlighting resilience, adaptation, and survival. When we zoom out, the story of the Maya becomes part of a much bigger picture, one that links them to a web of human migration, mixing, and complexity across Mesoamerica. Migrations, mixing, and human complexity. Zooming out from individual cities and settlements, the DNA findings show the Maya as part of a larger, interconnected human network across Mesoamerica. Far from isolated, they were constantly in contact with neighboring populations through trade, intermarriage, and migration. Genetics reveals patterns that artifacts alone could never capture. Hints of long-distance connections, waves of new arrivals, and a shared ancestry web stretching across hundreds of miles. These revelations help explain why certain cultural elements appear in unexpected regions. Architectural styles, ritual practices, or artifacts once thought local may have been influenced by newcomers or visiting populations. Genetic mixing suggests that the flow of people went hand in hand with the flow of ideas. Maya civilization wasn't a static system. It was dynamic, adapting continuously as communities merged, split, and exchanged knowledge. The bigger picture also highlights human adaptability and resilience. DNA shows that the Maya were able to survive environmental pressures, diseases, and social upheavals precisely because they weren't completely isolated. Connections with other groups brought diversity in genes, skills, and strategies, helping populations bounce back from challenges that might have doomed a fully isolated community. In short, the Maya were both unique and part of something larger. Their brilliance in mathematics, astronomy, and architecture was shaped not only by their environment, but also by a network of genetic and cultural interactions. DNA doesn't just rewrite their ancestry, it reframes how we understand human history itself, showing that civilizations grow, thrive, and survive through movement, mixing, and complexity rather than isolation. And while this interconnectedness is fascinating, not everyone welcomed these revelations, sparking debates, controversy, and questions that go far beyond the science controversy and public reaction. As soon as the Maya DNA findings hit the headlines, the reactions were immediate and mixed. Scientists were buzzing with excitement, recognizing the groundbreaking nature of uncovering migrations, genetic mixing, and previously hidden population dynamics. For the first time, DNA was giving life to questions that archaeology alone couldn't fully answer. But the public response was a different story. Media outlets, eager for clicks, framed the discoveries as shocking or even controversial, suggesting the Maya weren't pure or that their accomplishments were somehow less remarkable. Headlines exaggerated or oversimplified the findings, sparking debates that often strayed from the science itself. Some readers misunderstood the nuance. The DNA doesn't diminish the Maya, it highlights their resilience, adaptability, and the complexity of their society. Within the academic world, debates flared as well. How much weight should DNA evidence carry compared to artifacts, architecture, and glyphs? Are the interpretations of migration patterns definitive, or could future studies revise them again? Ethical questions emerged too, particularly around testing ancient human remains and sharing findings with descendant communities. Despite the controversy, one thing is clear. These discoveries forced everyone, scientists, students, and the public alike, to rethink what they know about human history. And the lessons from this debate aren't just about the past, they're about how we approach human history, science, and culture today. The Maya DNA revelations offer lessons far beyond Mesoamerica. First, they remind us that human history is never simple. Civilizations grow, thrive, and survive through movement, mixing, and adaptation, not isolation. Genetics shows us connections invisible to artifacts, reshaping our understanding of ancestry, migration, and resilience. Second, the findings highlight the value of combining disciplines. Archaeology and history provide context, while DNA uncovers hidden patterns, filling gaps, and correcting assumptions. Together, they create a fuller, richer picture of human life. Finally, there's a broader takeaway. History is messy, complex, and surprisingly human. Populations face challenges, adapt, mingle, and overcome, leaving traces in both culture and genes. By embracing that complexity, we can better appreciate the achievements and struggles of civilizations like the Maya, and understand that our own story is similarly intricate, shaped by countless unseen threads connecting past and present. As DNA technology advances, who knows what other secrets of the past are waiting to be uncovered? Drop your thoughts below and hit that subscribe button for future uploads.